All right.
Okay.
There we go.
Exploring possible, probable, and preferred futures.
There we go. Look at that. I should just, that's a new thing. We should just hand the card to our guests.
Yes,
you introduce the show.
Yes. This is why we're here today, Jeff.
You have to bring a few of these.
We've got a stack, and we have a whole bunch of nice
stickers as well.
Vinyl stickers. Yes. So they're really good. So that you can hold on to your worst shot of the morning.
For people listening in, if you keep this into the cold open, we have already had a morning of trying to throw waste paper into the bin in the end of the corner.
Have any actually gone in?
No.
The first go?
No, and I just bricked it so hard that it is stuck on the ledge. So I'll have to clean that up when we're done. Oh,
physically inept. Welcome to the Physically Inept Modem Futura podcast.
You know, it's like I feel like it's one of those things where I'm like, I used to be good at sports. I really did. And then now I'm like, yeah, that's my handiwork.
See, I was never good at basketball. I didn't make the team in ninth grade, and that doomed me.
So you're being your authentic self this morning.
Yeah. See,
I suck at basketball.
See, for you, that's everything is just as is, right? For me, this is a clear evidence of decline, which is perhaps more alarming.
You have home court advantage. You should be able to hoop it here in the dark.
Even worse. Let's make it even worse. No, this is first of all, this is going to be, I think, a really fun episode. It's a little bit different in this. Well, one, we've got a guest, which is also amazing. So Jeff, thank you for quickly agreeing to come talk with us and join this crazy insanity of Modem Futura when you walk through that door. But also, so we've been beating around the bush, I think, on this project for a while.
For a while, we've been dripping little bits of information about this book.
That's it.
Yes.
Because we'll take a break in a moment and kind of kick the show off officially. But essentially, Andrew and Jeff have been working on a book for not that long.
Well, actually, it goes back to
6
March,
or 9 months.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
which doesn't feel long with the book
before then.
In earnest, 6 months, but initial conversations.
Yes.
9 months.
But it's still pretty fast.
I was going to say, from the outside perspective, from a lay person's perspective on writing a book, that doesn't feel like that long. So
no, and believe me, I've got the burn marks for how fast we go.
Yes, he does.
We've talked about it. There have been times where you come in, you're like, I haven't slept in days, and I'm just like, oh man, you got to get this thing out the door and onto the shelves, and I think you're there, right?
We're so less than 3 weeks away.
I see one sitting on the table in front of me.
Well,
I think it's officially out, isn't it?
Well, no, it would be like to say this with this mock-up. So these are the proofs. It's not quite officially out yet, but yes.
Yeah.
But by the time this airs, it will be.
And that's
this will air on the day,
which is going to be
everybody can go out and purchase it.
So that is one of the things I have a note to when we end, especially. Maybe we should do it when we begin as well. Is exactly because when this podcast drops will be the premiere day that the book is available. So we need to make sure that people will know where and how to get their hands or their eyes on it, I guess, depending on format. But this will be a tremendous fun. So I say we'll just take a quick pause and we'll just kick this thing off.
Great.
All right. Well, welcome to Modem Futura. I'm Sean Leahy, joined by my co-host extraordinaire,
Andrew Maynard.
And we are joined today by a very special guest, Jeffrey Abbott. So, Jeff, I'm going to read your bio here in just a second. But for those of you who are new, you are listening to the Modem Futura podcast, the show that explores the intersection of technology, society, and the possible, probable, and preferable futures, asking deep questions like, what does it mean to be human in the future? You can also read the card if you want, Jeff.
That's an awful lot to think about.
It is a lot. And we cover a ton on the show, which is so much fun. I'm still kind of coming down on the high of like the last 2 weeks. Our episodes have been tickling the tops of charts, which has been super fun. And for fun ways. I mean, I love the fact that we're number one in sloppy clankers.
There's shows we'll take whatever we can get. But as of this morning, if you searched Apple Podcasts for sloppy clankers, we were number one. We were the number one show.
Number one. And maybe
and see, Jeff is thinking,
wait, is that like Peaky Blinders? Is that a new show on Netflix?
Well, actually, it should be. It should be a new show. Yes.
I think we have just discussed it. This is our project, Sloppy Clankers. a really bad AI version of Peaky
we'll tell you
Blinders.
later what sloppy clankers actually means. But
And also, Jeff, if all of a sudden you're thinking, what did I just agree to coming on? I will say also the week before, Futures Thinking was our number one.
Yes.
So we were the number one for that, which
Fantastic.
maybe that's one a little bit more pride to tell my mother,
Right.
as opposed to, hey, Mom, we're the number one at Sloppy Clankers.
But it's not a sandwich, is it?
No. It's AI. It's the idea that this sort of derogatory term for robots and AI is clankers, and then you've got AI slop. So we've got sloppy clankers.
Yeah, sloppy clankers.
Yes.
But we're while certainly we might talk about sloppy clanker issues, that's not why we're here today. We are here because we are, again, we're going to talk about this amazing book project, but we have a special guest who's joining us, who's the other half of this book project, Jeffrey Abbott. So, Jeff, you are a VC, venture capitalist, right? Founding partner at Blitzkrieg Blitzscaling.
Oh no, the Krieg part can't be anywhere near this.
That can't be anywhere. Yeah, see, that's how that's where we're
it's
going.
It's an unfortunate association of the word.
That just came out without even. I'm looking at the word blitzscaling, and I said Blitzkrieg twice.
It's a great point of sensitivity. But yes, blitz, the German word for lightning. It translates into the lightning fast building of massively valuable companies.
There you go. Blitzscaling Ventures, and also the founder and community builder of AI Salon, which is super cool. And I think, please also feel free if you would like to say a little bit about just like kind of your professional background, if you will, to introduce yourselves to our audience.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. It's been a delight to work with Andrew on the book project, and it's really directly relevant to the two principal forms of my engagement with the world right now, which is as a venture capitalist at Blitzscaling Ventures.
Not Blitzkrieg Ventures, whatever the hell that is.
Where we invest in early stage AI companies. And of course, looking for ones that can be massively valuable and future impact in their markets. And AI Salon is a community that I started to bring kind of Silicon Valley events, unite the community in different cities around the world. I saw a real need to bring people together in real life. AI is such an important advancement.
Yeah.
It's not just company building. I don't think it's just the next wave of startups. It's going to have a real impact on who we are. And so getting people together in real life to have real conversations, and hopefully this book is a way to inject into those communities that very conversation that we hope people will have all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. What I was going to say too, the AI Salon that's where we first met, was through, that's how I first became aware of you, and was between your interaction through AI Salon. And I think maybe there was an invitation to Andrew. I can't remember what the meet cute
was. A while ago now, wasn't it? Yes.
Andrew spoke, and actually that's where this whole project kicked off. So what is AI Salon? It's a decentralized, chapter-based community that I started here in Phoenix, actually on the campus at ASU, that I quickly scaled to now almost 70 chapters around the world. I was going to
say, it was 60 a few weeks ago when we were finalizing the book. It's now 70 plus.
If you take into account conversations in the pipeline, which isn't quite fair, there's over 70 chapters at some stage of advancement.
And for people who are listening, I mean, it's international. So we also, Jeff, I don't know if you know, but we have a very international audience as well.
Cool.
So probably locations of your international, they're everywhere. They're Amsterdam, there's Lisbon, there's...
Yeah, it's a really long list. You can see it at aisalon.ai, but that's certainly the Middle East, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Cairo, soon in Riyadh, all over Europe. 12 chapters in Latin America, now across Asia. And the basic format is the same. People coming together, speakers helping educate the audience, showcasing people who are building or creating companies around AI, and then networking. And what we're trying to do is put a platform behind all of that to connect people around the world so they can interact with one another and hopefully have important conversations and build businesses together.
Absolutely. And just to put a plug in there too, so anyone who's living either in the US or outside anywhere internationally, check out the AI Salon website to see if there's a local chapter near you.
Yeah, and if there's not, you can simply raise your hand and fill out a form.
Email Jeff.
We'll talk to you tomorrow about starting a chapter in your city. It's free and easy to get started, and we want to help people everywhere.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I was thinking, and you gentlemen, feel free to push back on this, but I was thinking, okay, so we've got like 45-ish minutes.
Oh, really?
I'm going to try.
When do we last do a 45-minute podcast?
Hey, if we put the marker there, that way when we go over, we can feel bad, and then it tells us it's time to start ending. Jeff, I think we have like 4 episodes at 45 minutes or under. Everything else is usually longer. But I was thinking what we could do to kind of shape this book, because again, I think the book and the messaging behind it and the power behind it is going to be something that, yes, we were kind of dripping it out a little bit as teasers, but as we continue on past its release, I think this is going to be something that is going to be playing around in the background for quite a while.
Yep.
So I was thinking is how to try to unpack this, is we could maybe take it in 3 major chunks that I can kind of toss to you guys to help fill in the gaps. One is essentially where on earth did this idea come from? Mm-hmm. And then I think there's a lot we want to know about the process, because the process is really interesting. And that's something, Andrew, you've been teasing that a little bit along the way as well. And then of course, like for people, I think maybe aspirationally also who might have similar aims of writing or publishing, like what has that whole experience been like too? Because that also, not to give too much away, but that has also been a journey of discovering how to do this basically on your own. So I think let's take it back to the beginning. Where did this crazy Jeff? I blame you.
This is all Jeff's fault. This is nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
So where did this idea come from? Like, because I mean, my memory of this was, hey, you guys want to meet? I've got an idea to talk about and want to explore some things. And it was like, so you had already come with this idea or some version of it. But I'm just curious, like, where did the idea behind writing this book?
And we should say what the book is, because I don't think, So I mean, the book is called AI and the Art of Being Human, with the subtitle, get the right subtitle.
Here, hand one of those to each of us.
So
we'll hold them up for our cameras.
So these are actually sort of proofs. They're not the final thing, but yes, AI and the Art of Being Human, a practical guide to thriving with AI while rediscovering yourself in the process.
That's right. And for those,
it literally is a hands-on practical guide.
Yes. Which is incredibly cool. And for those who are watching in spatial, we'll put it right in there.
You can see all my little marks, my editorial marks in there.
That's right. No, this is absolutely fantastic. I mean, and I think, and again, for me, this has been a fun thing because I've had the front row seat, but without the stress, which is like, so it's like I get to gain everything from this process, but not have to actually sweat out the details.
Unlike Jeff, who's been at the end of my text, sort of say,
It looks like he's a little better rested.
I know.
I think we should, as we kind of get in behind the idea, and also because it's not just a book that you pick up and read and put down.
Oh, no. So this is really important. Jeff, I'm sure you'll say more about this, but this is designed to be foundational to how people make decisions, think about AI, sort of integrate AI into their lives, and really reconnect with who they are in this world of AI. And there's a whole bunch of tools in here, but this is, I think, just the beginning of a whole sort of way of thinking about working with AI.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. So Jeff, where did this idea come from, my friend? What were you doing, man?
It's a number of influences that have all kind of converged. Some of them have been playing out in my mind for years, and some of them came about just in the past few. But I think it's really 3 or 4 major threads. One is the speed with which AI hit. Right? It's
sure. Yeah.
The fact that it's the biggest thing happening in generations, that it's literally going to not just change the software we're using, but somehow change our lives in ways that we can't imagine. Number 2, the fact that language itself is now the interface really caught me as interesting, because I'm not a coder. Sure. I'm not technical. I'm actually a humanities student, a history major. And so I got particularly interested
so
because...
you too can be successful if you have a humanities degree.
Yes, I'm a big proponent of that. I lament the decline of humanities and history degrees around the world. But the fact that, anyone who has a cogent thought process can interact with these tools based on language really grabbed me, because I love language. I love words. I've studied many different languages, and I think they're important. They deserve to be preserved. LLMs should not just be English and made in Silicon Valley. I believe people should have the models that they want. Number 3, I've had a chance over a number of years to work with the authors of best-selling business books, and have long, had kind of one foot in and out of academia, teaching, and been inspired by many books that have really affected me. Number 4 was starting this community, AI Salon, and having the opportunity to meet so many people. I haven't been to certainly more than a fraction of the 60 plus communities now, but maybe I've been to a dozen.
Hey, life goals, you know?
Yeah. I mean, maybe they'll buy me a ticket and I'll get to go to a few more places. But it turned out that, people are ostensibly coming out for the transactional level things like, I'm building a startup, or how can I find a customer or find an investor? But on the sidelines, the need for connection, the need for making friends, feeling a part of a community, and then the conversations that would lead to. I started having people raise their hands. What's the thing that you came here that you're most preoccupied about? Is it, looking for free software credits? Is it finding an investor? Or perhaps is it something deeper? Wanting to understand what the impact of AI is going to be on your life. Should I keep studying what I'm studying? What should I tell my kids? What kind of company should I invest in?
Right.
There were these much larger sort of transcendental questions that that people were wanting to talk about. And that's when I thought maybe there's a chance to address these issues. In the meantime, I had invited Andrew out about March, I think it was, of 2024.
It was, yes, I think.
Already a long time ago. Yes, to be a guest speaker. And how did I know about Andrew? Well, the Modem Futura podcast.
You heard it here.
And also the Andrew's newsletter.
Right. And the Future Being Human stuff. Yes,
the Future Being Human. Yep. And since we were running the events at ASU, I reached out to Andrew, never met, said, would you join us? And what he talked about simply blew me away, right? And so, over time, I tried to continue building a relationship with him. And as these ideas, let's say, formed a little more completely, I reached out and said, what do you think about something like this? That would combine, equal parts practical business guide, equal parts sort of capturing the zeitgeist of the moment, what AI means for the future, the questioning that people have, and building in many of the things that he's already a leader in thinking about. And so that's, kind of how the conversation started. But it's clearly many deep threads for both of us that are far more than momentary.
Built from there. But what was amazing to me was sort of how much synergy there was there. So me coming from this idea of thinking deeply about how technology sort of changes our understanding of who we are and how we work with it, you ostensibly coming from the VC community, apart from the fact, and you haven't mentioned this yet, you have such a broad interest in what it actually means to be human. And one of the things that's come out from this is not just about business, but it's about sort of practices that get to the heart of who we are. And all of those conversations you've had over decades with people that have influenced how you think.
Yeah, I think it is a call to people to not let this just be about business.
Yes.
On the surface, it looks like a choice of what's my new software, or what's the strategy for my company, right?
Sure.
Or how are we going to involve this in our schools, right? It looks like all these, the tyranny of small decisions, right? But if we don't have the right conversations and believe that we have a choice in influencing the AI we get, we're going to get the one they give us.
Right.
And that may not be our preferred future, to use your terminology.
And it was the fact that sort of those conversations within AI Salon, and what amazed me was you start talking to these sort of hard-headed business people about sort of how AI affects everything that's important to them, and you suddenly realize they're hungry for what goes beyond just the transactional. And that's, I think, what we're exactly sort of addressing here.
Yeah. Well, I would say, even from like that business mindset community, right? Any sort of transition with a technology that's as pervasive. And Jeff, this show, we have talked at length about all the ways that, essentially at this moment we're living in, that AI is embedded in the fabric of all human activity at this moment. I'm tempted to bring up, what I'm tempted to bring up, but I won't. I'll leave it there. Otherwise, I'll go off on another 10 minutes.
You'll have to tell me later.
Sure. It's hard not to do. But essentially, like, as we sit here now, like, AI has seeped into almost every facet, right? Even if you're not explicitly seeking out a tool to use, it is if you're writing a Microsoft Word document, you now have the AI version of Clippy bugging you the whole time saying, do you sure you want, I can format that for you. And it's like, so even if you're not trying to engage with these tools, they are influencing your life, whether you want them to or not. So I think it's incredibly fascinating, sort of that idea. And I think, as Andrew, you were pointing out, I think what's interesting as you read this book too is it gets into a lot of some of like the not necessarily explicitly, but again, the philosophies of what does it mean? What does it mean to be human in this sense? And how do we?
It does. And so one of the things I was going to point out, so this is definitely a hybrid book. It was written for a business community. And if you read it, it's a little bit like a business book because it has practical guides. It has these sort of hands-on sort of exercises and things. And yet you read the endorsements on the back. Very first endorsement from the translator to the Dalai Lama. Somebody, Jeff, who you have a connection with. But so very first thing, this is not a business person, but you go down the list and you've got people like Tom Kelly, who is in the business community. You've got Ewan Blair, who's Tony Blair's son, who is the founder of Multiverse, an AI company. So you've got this really interesting sort of fusion of deep thinkers about what it truly means to be human, as well as really hardened business people.
Indeed.
And I love that connection.
And both of them have been inspirations for this book. And I think it just really crystallizes the fact that everyone is seeing that this is somewhat of a seminal moment in human history where something fundamental is changing. And people want to talk about it. And I think more than talk about it, they need to understand it. They need to have a plan. And we're just trying to, in effect, provide them a vocabulary and possibly some tools. A waymark.
Yes. To drop that in, which of course actually is part of the process because this is published through a new company, Waymark Works, that we actually set up specifically to do this. Or Jeff set up.
No, absolutely. It's wild. It's going back to the beginning. Okay, so part of the idea, right? One of the things that's it's the subtitle. Right, a guide to thriving with AI without losing yourself,
or the new one, practical guide to thriving with AI without while rediscovering yourself in the process.
So let me ask about that. So what does thriving look like?
Right.
Thriving.
So what's the idea behind this? Right. So this idea of thriving.
I think thriving for me means being excited, being optimistic, that you're doing something that you like, that is drawing upon your real innate essential self, right? And you're succeeding at it. And so what we try to get at the book is, well, if you're doing a job right now that's very transactional or very replicable by AI, it's going to be difficult to thrive when you're competing against something so powerful that it has already surpassed your abilities, right? So that's probably not a place that you're going to thrive anymore. So what is? And everyone has to ask themselves those questions, right? I remember a book called Flow by the famous University of Chicago psychologist Mihaly. I'm going to get the last name wrong. Something like Csikszentmihalyi. Csikszentmihalyi, yes.
Which I still don't think is accurate, but it's pretty close, I think.
Better job than me. I absolutely butchered it. But the point of that book was, right, they looked across 40 countries, across all the variables, what made people happy. It wasn't youth, it wasn't health or sickness, it wasn't age, it wasn't wealth, it was being in flow. And what was being in flow? Doing something you love, that you're good at, that you lose yourself in. And the point was, you got to focus on what that thing is and put time on your calendar every day, or it slips away from you. And so that kind of same process of discovering, who are you? What is it you care about? What is it that you're uniquely good at that you could bring into the world? And then how do you harness AI to let you be the best version of yourself, rather than fearing replacement, I think is at the core of this, right? It's a core to rediscover who you really most want to be.
And no, I absolutely agree. I mean, so within all of that, there are these ideas of joy. What brings you joy with what you do? How do you create value, which is sort of personal to you? How do you create meaning in your life? How do you have an impact that makes you feel as if this is something worthwhile? And what I loved writing this is the realization that as soon as you take away this idea that we're in competition with AI and focus on what we can do either with or without AI, that becomes incredibly empowering, because then you think about, how do I create meaning which is meaningful to myself and others, either with AI or in the absence, depending on how I decide to sort of carve that pathway forward.
Yeah. And I think that's a very important distinction to make, because it's so often in the rhetoric that's out there, it is so much of, even right now at present, we're hearing, job loss, AI is taking job. And where are my claim is, show me the receipts. Where is this really happening? Or, we've seen, and in fact, the opposite of that, of some companies who have done that and then immediately regretted that.
Right.
But I think that shift of the narrative is what is needed, because it also is cutting against the hype that is this mythic technology will just be the end all be all. Yep. But in reality, it's about what is the symbiotic relationship between how we as humans can leverage the technologies and tools at our disposal to hopefully be more fulfilled in whatever that means, right? And in this case, maybe at more of a sort of a business practitioner slant is thinking about it through that lens, but easily you can apply that even if you're not a business person. Those are directly relevant to almost like to students, to anybody, right?
Absolutely.
A podcaster.
And one of the things that still sticks with me, one of the tools that we have, and we have 21 tools through these, but it's a spectrum of how you think about yourself in relationship to AI. And along this spectrum on the left, you have replaceable skills, the things that you do that an AI will one day be able to replace. Secondly, you have relationships, the things that you do that create meaning, that create value to you because of relationships with other people.
Yeah.
And then finally, on the right, it's those transcendent qualities you have, those things that are innately human and personal. It doesn't make them better or worse, but it's something that isn't replicable simply because it is part and parcel of who you are, your life experience.
It's what the Buddhists would call your dharma, the things that you can't but help do because you're just called to do them because they give you great meaning, whether they're rewarding financially or practical. You may even lose time and money just because you care.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And then so focusing on that transcendental stuff, or that dharma, or those relationships, it means you can thrive in a world of AI because you're not setting yourself up to compete with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think that is, and again, that mindset, I think that shift, because I think there is, I would say right now, the narrative so much as out there is not that. Right. That it's either replacement with, whatever. But I think that the realities, I mean, again, if I put my futures lens hat back on, the reality is no, it's not replacement. It is, how do you do this in connection with, and how do you find meaning through?
Right.
Because I think that's going to be wildly important. All right, let's maybe shift gears just a little bit, and I want to hear about how this thing is done. Because this is where I saw the sweat. The idea phase is easy. That's the juicy, exciting part. The writing phase is where I saw you, Andrew, with no sleep.
But this was so interesting. So we decided early on. I remember when we started talking about this was just going to be a fairly conventional book. We had the ideas. We were going to sit down and sweat it out and write it. Mm-hmm. And then we realized a couple of things. First of all, this was going to be a lot of work, and we're both busy people. But secondly, there is an urgency of this. Even when we were first talking, the feeling was this book needed to exist now. The one thing we could not wait for is 18 months, 2 years going through a fairly formal publishing process. By which time,
we'd be publishing in February of 2027.
That's it.
Even if we had a deal now.
That's exactly it. So we'd have a book on our resume, but in terms of having impact and creating value, it wouldn't be worth a single thing. So we actually decided we had to find the fast track way forward. And part of that was making a very, very conscious decision to work intentionally with artificial intelligence. And it wasn't a decision we took lightly, because it comes with a whole load of baggage. But it was a decision we made because we saw how we could actually live what we were writing about in the book by finding that way of elevating what we do, who we are, and the value we create, working hand in glove with artificial intelligence. So the book is actually part of a really long, complex process of doing this. This is not a weekend bit of slop working with a clanker.
I was going to say, it was not fully sloppy clanking.
No, it wasn't produced in a week. It wasn't one conversation with AI that produced a manuscript that's now in the book.
It wasn't a single prompt. Write me a book. I should try. Write me a book on AI and artificial.
Well, it's funny. In the early days of Silicon Valley, I met a guy. It was quite impressive. He was coming to events, and he had a table like this full of various stacks of books on different topics that had all been written and published by AI.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So that, of course, is doable.
It is doable. Apart from the fact, one of the things we discovered, as I said, Jeff set up this company, so we have been responsible for every single stage of the process.
Yeah.
And the revelation to me has been that the writing was about 10% of it. The Everything else has been about 90%.
Yeah.
But what blew me away, I mean, I need to sort of ask you about this as well, Jeff, because we haven't had this conversation about sort of how this has sort of changed our perspective. But I've got to say, first of all, the process was working very, very closely with initially ChatGPT to get a sense of how we pulled our ideas together, and we put in our ideas. We brought in a number of influences from other people, other places, but really this was guided by what we wanted to achieve.
Right.
So we had these long conversations. We began to craft out a style and a structure for the book, but then we started working with AI to actually craft the words. And I've actually spoken about this before in a previous podcast, where AI sort of created the raw material, which we then sort of refined and chipped away so we could see the story within. And we used Anthropic's Claude for this because we discovered that this was able to catch our voice, and very explicitly we trained it on our voice.
Yeah.
But this is what blew me away. Once we'd set all that up, the ideas and the stories coming out of AI just transcended anything I could imagine. They were, Jeff, you can tell the story because you thought you were reading this initially thinking Andrew wrote this.
Oh, indeed. But when you started sending me the initial manuscripts and he said he had been using Claude, I literally would have believed him if he had said he'd written every word, right down to his manner of speaking, right down to little sort of Britishisms like they could do, or
right. But I was
spelling. I mean, it literally had captured a voice.
The first draft was all in English, British English,
not
American English. And I have no idea why. I know we had to correct that, but there are points of this where the prose were so moving it had me in tears. And I cannot believe I'm actually saying this.
But
the same happened to me.
Yes,
I was sitting on a couch, at 5 a.m, Sausalito this summer, revising and editing. We went through so many different iterations. As Andrew said, it would generate the words, and we'd maybe do that 2 or 3 times, and cull out the passages and the iterations and craft the version that felt best to us as humans. There were times when the quote that was chosen was, "It's my God, it's from my favorite poet. Where is that book on my shelf that I haven't read in years, that I used to literally be moved to tears by? And here it is moving me to tears now. How did it know to pick that?"
So
because it's always watching you, Jeff.
but it shows. I mean, but this exactly mirrors the book. So you'll see when you read the book, it has a very unusual structure, and it was a structure that evolved from our conversations with AI. And at one point, the particular AI we were working with, I think it was ChatGPT at the time, sort of was talking about sort of having a cinematic-like structure where we tell these stories that are very cinematic, but allow us to both sort of tease out ideas around specific tools and ways of thinking. But then when you read the book, you'll see that the whole book is built around these fictions. Very
little
intentionally.
vignettes are and I would just interrupt to just say one thing. Like when I go through and scan the vignettes are incredibly powerful, creating visuals. I was not prepared.
Cinematic.
I was not prepared for that. Because normally when you have vignettes in books, you're like, Bob is at the grocery store and he has a challenge. But when you read these things, like it is cinema. Like the imagery that is called is like I'm watching a short film that is setting the stage, right?
And it did that incredibly. And of course, we've refined
naturally,
this.
Naturally too. It doesn't feel awkward or like stuck in.
So,
but they're also, these vignettes, emblematic of real situations
Absolutely.
that real people are facing all around the world. Case in point, about 3 months ago, we held a small conversation here in your space with the AI Salon Phoenix community. And Andrew, you were the guest and you previewed some of these ideas. And at the end, one of the startup founders, who's building a agent-based process that basically replaces sales reps, engaged in the conversation and told us the story of his personal vignette about how he felt about the business while it was scaling and bringing on a lot of customers. He was deeply moved by the conversation because he was aware of some of the, let's say, lateral impacts that what he was doing and benefiting from was creating in the world. And so I know that these vignettes are capturing, although fictional, they're capturing real situations real people are facing every day.
And this is the power. Of course, this is something that Sean and I know because we're in this world. It's the use of fiction rather than real case studies. And to be honest, we've had pushback. We've had people reading this saying, why didn't you use real people? There's a very, very important reason. And in fact, actually 2 reasons. One is these real life cases don't exist at the level of maturity we need at the moment because this technology is so new. And secondly, we know when we're thinking about the future, stories have got a power that real life examples simply do not have.
Yeah. And I think that is a key piece because, and to kind of pull in a completely different element here. I mean, that's also a technique often used in like visual storytelling with photography, right?
Yes.
There are the intent to show a person, but not sometimes to show a face or to over describe and give personality to the individual so the viewer can see themselves in that role. Right.
Yes,
if you're like, this is Bill and here's his background and here's this, you don't see yourself in that unless it's in a one-to-one match. But if it is more around, you can, as a reader, you can sort of project yourself into that experience. And again, when it's a literal one, that is not easy to do because it's already been like the waveform, to speak, has been collapsed on that person.
That's right. Yes.
It's no longer.
Whereas this keeps possibilities open.
It keeps possibilities open, and you can, just like great fiction does, you are part of that story. You kind of come into it, which I think is also what helps elevate the power of those vignettes so much.
I know
they're just so vivid.
Plus the fact, this was Jeff that really pushed this because AI Salon is global. These vignettes are global as well. This is not a US centric book, but the stories are very human, so they resonate with anybody.
I mean, the first one kicks off in Munich, right?
It does, yes.
So let me back up and ask. I want to ask a technical question. What happened with the switch between OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Claude?
Yeah,
because there's probably people wondering like because we've talked at length, of course. I mean, through the history of our show, it's no secret. Andrew and I, we both have like the mega versions of OpenAI and whatever. But because I think if I put myself in the perspective of someone who doesn't know what happened in the process, can you shed some light on the process of how? Because again, from my experience using it, not to write a book, even just to write other things, is how frustrating it'd be. You give one thing, you're like, this is amazing. This is exactly how I wanted it to come out. And I can use this and I can tailor it. And then you do the same thing tomorrow and it's junk.
This was part of it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we learned was, it is incredibly hard to get good content out of AI. And a lot of our process, and you look at our prompt sort of ecosystem we use, and there are thousands upon thousands of words there. These are very long, complex prompts. But I got to the point where everything was lined up. I started sort of feeding this to ChatGPT, and I didn't like what I was reading. It didn't resonate with me. It didn't feel as if it had the soul there.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe I should just try Claude, because I'd heard that Claude is good for writing.
And it has its own flavor, right? As a different LLM.
I was blown away. So it was
immediately perceptible.
I was going to say, Jeff, did you notice a difference? Could you detect as
absolutely?
Really? Yeah. Okay.
It felt that it had our soul. So if you think what we were feeding sort of a Claude for each chapter, we had the shared compass. So this was the document that basically captured our vision and made sure that whichever AI we used hit all the right points with it. It had our authorial style. So basically, this was a document that describes our joint style, and we worked together on that to make sure that it captured it. And then we had the description of the chapter that was to be written, and that was an art in itself, because the description had to have enough there to guide the AI, but not too much. The more prescriptive you make it, the more you erode the creativity.
Sure.
And we found that combination of that sort of prompt sequence and Claude using Opus 4 just led to these beautiful, consistent results that we just could not replicate any other way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fascinating to see that.
I would add,
this was something, and you know, all credit must be given to Andrew here for the deep commitment of time and experimentation to develop these prompts. This was probably my biggest learning from the entire thing, which was how to use AI to do these things, right? Because, you know, I came in with some ideas, with a lot of sources and specific things, but what we really did, as he mentioned, was to create this whole, let's say, series of prompts that each one was playing a different role.
Yeah.
From the macro right down to the micro, and then all of them were being introduced each time for each chapter. to produce this
and
result.
And then, of course, there were conversations as well. Yeah. So sort of it would turn out that the first draft, and I'd say, don't like this. You got to tweak that. You got to expand that. You got to put more heart and soul into this. So it was still an iterative process. Yeah.
I'm just giggling, asking a machine to put some heart and soul into,
But it was quite amazing what it did. But then there was another aspect of this as well. So this is a little bit of the secret sauce. We had this thing called the lore book, which tracked every character, every storyline, sort of every tool.
I'm glad you bring that up, because that was a question I would have, is like, because again, even if you're, for people who would consider themselves advanced users of generative AI tools and such, very quickly you can see, even in systems that are supposed to be like the RAG, like the contained user, it can very quickly walk away from itself. So that was a thing that I was really curious, and I'm glad you brought that up, is just the challenge of working within a system that is randomized. I mean, you were talking about random, in terms of the technology that is creating these things, these are randomized.
This is a very well-trained stochastic parrot.
Yeah, right. But the thread of, like, if you're like, okay, two characters, whatever, Andrew and Jeff, and then you're like, and tell me what they do next, and you're like, well, Sam and Bill do, and you're like, wait, no. It's
so. And the way we got through this was sort of, we had the initial chapter outline and that initial chapter outline sort of had the big plots and the main characters, and we created, using AI again with a different set of prompts, a lore book, which basically said, these are the characters, this is where they are in the world, this is what they do, this is their nature. Then after each chapter, we ran another prompt to update that lore book. So we always had this running record of exactly who was in which chapter, who was doing what, sort of what their story arc was.
And just like in a cinematic production, they cycle in and out.
They do.
They come back and their stories evolve, their conclusions evolve, they mature in their thinking.
They do.
They weave in and out of the story. By the end, you feel like you know all of them. And in fact, they all come together on a Zoom conference.
And I've got to tell you that, so the last chapter is magical. And I had but it is also magical reality, because it couldn't actually happen as it's described. And in one of the earlier drafts, I actually had a little footnote about this, where I said, this is our Love Actually moment. So if anybody knows that the film Love Actually, a beautiful film, but if you look at it critically, the timelines simply don't work. But it doesn't matter, because the storytelling is amazing. That footnote ended up sort of coming out, but the end chapter is like that. It is such beautiful storytelling, where all of these characters that you've met over the course of the book come together in one Zoom meeting to basically sort of make their commitment to thriving in an age of AI.
Well, so here's one of the things is that maybe we can coax this into actual reality. Because I'm hoping that the AI Salon community and the people running it around the world will embrace the book and some of the ideas in it, and possibly encourage people to go start their own micro circles.
Sure.
And then possibly there is some global gathering like the one imagined in the book that could come together if real people have adopted these and we call them together.
Yes.
So it's a bit of a wish in a way. That we'll have to play a role in
prophecy.
Well, that's it. It's out there now. It's in the universe. And I will say, I think for me, one of the a major compliment that I want to pay to both of you is, and Andrew, you're this is not a surprise to you. I'm a fan of the McLuhan-esque way of nesting and sort of the meta capability of. So one, you can take the book and just read it and take from it what you want. But it is the amount of care that is inside the book. So one, also as you were just talking, right? It's not a book written from the sideline about how to play the sport.
Right.
It was the book itself.
We were living it.
Is a literal demonstration of thriving with an AI tool to still make this a human endeavor, a human output, but using the technologies and tools available to you to do things like put this book out in an expedited time frame and like being able to craft these elements. So the book itself is an artifact of exactly what the title is promising to do, which is amazing. Then even going further from that, right? The extraction of the tool set that can be pulled out. So read in line, read is part of the narrative, also extractable. And even the main characters, as you're mentioning, the fact that there is a section in the appendix that is just them. Who these air quote people are.
Right.
And again, the layer of the multitude of layers of care that weave throughout the book and connect these things back to each other is phenomenal. And I think that level of care, again,
but that is precisely part of the message.
That's the art. Yes,
here
yes.
on the compassion
that
card,
is
right?
it.
Yeah.
One of the 4 postures is caring,
Yep.
and I think the message is that if you take the time to reflect on who you are and what you are best at, and if you work with AI to empower that, or give your feedback at the very least to other people who are building AI, that care will absolutely shine through and be perceptible and make a difference in the world in the same way that we can notice a beautifully stitched piece of handmade clothing or a handmade leather bag and say, that is so beautiful. I really genuinely believe that when you care about something, that people resonate with that, and they pick up the sincerity, the authenticity,
100%,
and they're so much more likely to come with you on whatever journey.
100%,
and that is absolutely non-accidental.
Yeah, and I think Steve Jobs. I'll butcher the quote because it's been mangled but I mean essentially this idea of the care is painting the backside of the fence, right? The part that people don't see.
Yep.
And I think again, what is so powerful about a book like what you guys have created here is once it transcends the transactional element of just going through it and going, I could use this, I could use that. But because it is so nested, there are so many meta layers within it that this is one of those kind of things that you can keep coming back to it and learning, and taking different new things from it each time.
I would hope so. I would absolutely hope so. And just to get a sense of just how convoluted that is. You mentioned, I think Jeff mentioned the card. So people on video will see this. It's a little credit card size card. And on the front, it just has 4 points of a compass: curiosity, clarity, intentionality, and care. So these are actually sort of 4 sort of themes that run through the book, really sort of emphasizing sort of this is a framework to think about thriving with AI. But in that final chapter, on that Zoom call, they pull out a pocket card and say, basically, print this out, put it above your computer, put it in your wallet. And I was so inspired by this, we actually have them physically made. So this is the pocket card that was conceived by Claude as it was writing the book with us, that we have now created in reality.
Which is so cool. And if you're lucky enough to have one, it has the soft touch feel, which is just a tactile delight for any card.
Right.
Not to be used as a toothpick.
No.
In fact, I have used many a business card in my day as a toothpick and gotten it stuck. And then you're like, oh no, I've got
this was a little too thick for that.
You're like,
so forget the spinach. Is that a business card?
It's literally hanging out. Because if you pull it, it's just going to leave the pulp of the paper. So now you're like, I have the food now and a business card wedged in my tooth. Oh my God.
Well, picking up on the care too, and it's really important to acknowledge
good dental hygiene is always but
caring is something that you can do about your own work.
Yep.
But it's also something that we pull out the point that you should think about systemic levels as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just what you're immediately working on, but the knock-on effects. And I want to acknowledge that thinking was deeply inspired by several friends that I spent a lot of time talking with. One called Owsley Brown, who's a member of the board at the Mind and Life Institute and kindly provided an endorsement. And he introduced me to Thupten Jinpa, who Andrew earlier mentioned, the translator to the Dalai Lama, and also the founder and president of something called the Compassion Institute. And it's very much this idea that caring, that the acts that we do in the world should not just take into account ourselves or our immediate circle, but really think for the benefit of all beings. And when you think about the pervasiveness of AI, that is baked in here as well, that we're trying to provide tools and ways of thinking that someone can take this book and see, what can I do to help others?
Sure.
How can I take this and help my family, my kids, my organization, my venture capital firm, or whatever it may be? It's so that I want to acknowledge their influence on the thinking here as well.
Yeah. And I love the synergy here, because you came to care from that end. I came to care from my work on responsible innovation, and of course, working with Emma Frau, who we had on this show several episodes ago. And Emma's work is so profoundly influential with how we think about care and technology. We actually sort of use a little bit of her work in the book.
Yeah. And I mean, even just in our podcast, I mean, the amount of times we come back to the concept of care as this, because I mean, hey, at some level, without that care, what are we doing? Right. I mean, as a global society, if there's not putting the care into it, it's like, what are we doing here? Because that is not a pathway to
at some point,
flourishing.
the book kind of makes the point that you aren't what you do, you are what you care about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
absolutely.
very powerful.
Yes.
Awesome. I don't want to give too much away in terms of what's in the book.
Right.
But I will note. So I'm going to, for our audience, I'll just tease the different parts. So the book is split into 4 parts, right? Mindsets for the age of AI. Do you want to talk a little bit just generally about the part? How that's structured.
You're testing us now. I've been involved in editing.
What's on page? What's on page? Read me a quote from page 4 again. But I mean,
so it sets it up. Sort of part 1, which is first 4 chapters, sort of sets up sort of how you begin to sort of think about sort of who you are and how you sort of interact with AI, how AI potentially enhances or sort of challenges that. So we actually start with a chapter on the courage to be curious, and curiosity here is really important. But then ends in and we get into,
and that is one of your long-standing principal themes from all of your work.
Of curiosity. Incredibly. I mean, sort of from my
radical curiosity.
Yes. Actually, yes. I mean, we talk about radical curiosity through the future of being human. Critically important. And being able to keep your mind open, but also bring that level of humility with that as well.
Absolutely.
But we also talk about human exceptionalism in here. And this is
a really important point. And when we spoke about this, you've done a lot of work. You've done a lot of work thinking about, so what is human exceptionalism as an attitude, and how is AI breaking that down, and how are we encouraging people to respond?
And what I love about what we ended up with, it's essentially the message of be yourself. This is not because you're better because you're human or because you're worse, but because you are you. And so embracing that idea of being. So you don't talk about exceptionalism in that way, but you talk about being true to yourself. So yes,
but and then you've got care and practice in that section as well. And then the book moves on to
navigating change. Is the next bit. Yes, which then sort of goes on from the mindset to asking, well, how do you actually begin to sort of chart your pathway through this new age of AI?
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course, part 3 is then thriving in that partnership. That's navigating. Right. How does this all come together, right?
And that really begins to tap a lot into Jeff's work through AI Salon with building these communities and these partnerships.
Yeah, and I really like I think it's chapter 8 that is entitled "Conducting the Orchestra," right? Which I think is a great. I mean, even just that as a title for a chapter is a great metaphor for all these. Right. I mean, even as you're describing, again, using the book as a artifact of itself of something.
That's right.
These principles are done. The fact that was the word or the term that came to mind when you're describing all of those different pieces that you're wrangling together to get them to perform in the way that you want. I mean,
I just funny you should say that. So I don't know about you, Jeff, but there are chapters that I like more than others, and chapters that were a real pain to put together. And the orchestra one was one of those. I'm pleased with how it came out, but I was struggling with that at times. So I'm really glad to hear that it resonated.
Well, it really resonated with me, and actually one of my influences coming into this, and it was noted in one of the source documents, was a approximately 2011 book by Daniel Pink called A Whole New Mind.
Okay.
And the central thesis of that was, there's left-dominated thinking, which has kind of been ascendant over the last 100 years in an industrial economy, and then there's right-brain thinking, which for whatever reason has been less valued. But now, going forward, the real value is someone with a whole mind.
Yeah.
If you can step back and be the conductor and learn how to integrate both of those, there's value to be created.
Right.
But now AI allows all of us to be a conductor, right? Because you can create things that would have required a right brain, and you can create things that would have required a left brain.
And just to clarify for people
who the systems integrator.
And just to clarify for people who may not recognize that terminology, left braining meaning more analytical, quantitative, etc. Where right brain is typically ascribed to more the creative and language and expression and things like that.
But the other thing that this chapter really exemplifies is this is a practice-based book that anybody can pick up. This is absolutely not an academic or an intellectual book, to the extent that some of the tools and ideas are so simple and obvious that I don't think we can sort of take credit for them, because these are ideas that have been floating around for a long time. It's just that they coalesce here.
Sure.
So this idea of the conductor, so people that are watching the video will be able to sort of see the diagram here. It's simply a triangle. And it's a triangle that at one point it has data, then it has context and intuition. And the whole chapter is about when you make decisions, when you actually sort of decide what to do and how to do it, you have to orchestrate between the three, the data, the quantitative stuff, the context, how you're actually using it, and the intuition, what actually is part of you, with how you sort of feel through this.
Yeah, I think that's great too. And I think, and I don't know how much do you want to talk about the tools? Maybe not specific. I mean, again, you got to buy your copy if you want to get the full list. But again, I think what you touched on, I think, is very important. Is that because I think the word tool can also sometimes be intimidating. That it's like, it's a quantitative tool, and you're like, oh my god, I'm going to have to calculate the standard deviation. I don't think so. But so I think that's a great example of how that is used. And even some of the reflection tools are like, notice when this happens. What do you think about that? How does that? How are it's things as simple as asking you to recognize something and do a gut check.
Yes.
How are you emotionally feeling about this versus how are you thinking about it, maybe intellectually or something. But again, even that triangle, a tool frame. I mean, triangles are phenomenal as a tool.
Right.
I mean, we use them all. There's literally a futures triangle. There's the exposure triangle. I mean, anytime you have more than one extra variable, but it's a great way of seeing that tension between these different points.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a place where the call to humanity, where maybe the spiritual influences behind the book and the business converge very nicely.
Exactly it, yes.
Right. So I'm coming from a background where, I received formal training in the 7 habits of highly effective people.
Sure.
And I took a corporate strategy executive course at University of Chicago and learned things like Porter's 5 forces, right? I'm a big toolkit.
You do love your
fanatic.
You showed up one time one time, I'll share this with our audience. One time you came to a meeting with a stack of like 6 or 8 books that were all tools. And you're like, I'm a tool guy.
I love tools. And I worked with Chris Ye and Reid Hoffman.
You had a subtle influence on this book.
Yeah. To turn blitzscaling into tools, right? Because it's the one page, take
tools
a quick look,
it's
visual, right? You immediately get it. And the idea is that it helps you navigate and it turns uncertainty into something that if you habitually do it, gets you where you're going.
Yes.
And that's both an ingredient of most spiritual traditions, right? As well as the business toolkit.
Right, yes.
And so it's a perfect way to converge these two influences.
Yeah, which is what I love about this. I mean, it is that convergence in a very, very practical way. So, I mean, I sort of, in the sort of marketing blurb, we sort of say this is for high schoolers upwards, 18-year-olds and upwards. But I would guarantee that anybody from middle school and upwards would be able to read this, understand what it's saying, and see these tools and thinking, I know how I can use that.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see it. And then, I mean, that kind of gets into the last part there, the intentional futures, right? Which is this whole section about, the roadmap, building the communities, right? And that call to be intentional, that call to intentional humanity, right? Which is, again, I think, a very beautiful way of kind of tying these things all together.
Yes.
And, again, I can't say enough how much I appreciate the depth and care that this book represents, because I think the easy way out would have just been to write like, we think, a prescriptive book, which is a lot of them tend to be, right? Is I think you should use AI this way, and this is how it can make your life better, and there you go.
Who would read that? Yeah.
Well, lots of people.
Well, you are both futurists. And I had in the past worked with the scenario training methodology. So I think that's one of the reasons I really just groove with your way of thinking. But a lot of the sort of futures work in fiction that people are familiar with tend to be dystopian.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There's Brave New World or there's 1984. But in both of those places, there's the world that the people live in, which is somehow unsatisfactory, repressive, abusive, surveillance-oriented. And then there's those people living on the outside of it, right? The people that want to still be human,
sure,
for lack of a better description, and be soulful and not play by those rules.
Right.
I think the question here is, does it have to be those two stark choices, or do you have a choice to engage in your community with a thought process, and in the hope that together we can find our way through those two unfortunate choices and into something that's
I think that's exactly it. And it goes back, we've had a really great guest, Taryn, on here, talking about protopian. Yes, this idea of actually being able to sort of build positive, practical futures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I was just thinking too, I mean, like kind of tying back, Andrew, to, and you bring in the future. Jeff, you brought up the future stuff, so now I have an avenue to launch into this. But
big fan.
We had, again, this concept, we had talked about it. I think it was on our Futures Thinking podcast episode a few ago. about the awareness, the caution, if you will, maybe a cautionary tale, if you will, around a used future.
Right.
Right. And so again, for people who are, if you don't know, this is one of the sort of concepts that has sort of come out of sort of the 6 pillars of futures thinking, backed by Sohail Inatella, which is this concept of a used future is the sort of unaware or the subconscious change of how you view the future based on inputs from other. They could be people, agencies, whatever, and they might have their own motive for why the future looks the way it does. We want to, if you're in power, you want to stay in power. So the future can't exist without me. These kind of things. And it happens a lot. And it's not to prescribe a value judgment necessarily on that. But I think one of the powerful things about any tool or any opportunity, this book, I would say included, giving individuals the agency to start thinking about my future with AI does not have to look like these terrible, crappy futures that were often prescribed by the big tech companies. I mean, why is that always the narrative that it's replacement or it's one? It's a zero-sum game. It's one or the other. No, I think as you mentioned, I think right off at the top of the episode here, Jeff, that part of that is having the agency to decide, and how we decide can look very different. But having the agency decide what does that future look like with me and AI together in my life to what is thriving for my definition of what that looks like.
That's it.
And that is something that again is powerful, and I think it speaks to the care that was put into that. I'm going to keep hammering that because I think ultimately, because to me, when I'm very selective of books I buy in paper. Right, most of the books I consume are electronic and digital.
Yes, yep.
This is a type of book that I think I want a physical copy because this is something you just bring with you.
Right,
you're going camping for the weekend. You toss it in because you never know when it might come up, or you might use it or whatever. Yep. You toss it in, to bring it with you on your trip. You're thinking about it. You're passing it along to other. So to me, I think that this book has that power to transcend the transactional. Here's what 2 guys thought about how I should live with AI. Right. It really is about how I think want to navigate my pathway.
Yeah. That comes back to the stories as well, because people can see themselves in those stories and understand how they can see the world differently.
Yeah. And then from them branch all kinds of thoughts.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing, we try to do that across so many different avenues of our work, is sparking those conversations. Because what a sad, desolate place if people aren't involved in designing the future. Right. We talk about this a lot, that it's a participatory experience and not the future will happen to you, but how do you take agency to make sure that it is your future, right?
For sure. I had an epiphany when I was visiting Antofagasta, Chile, which is on the northwest coast of Chile, so far up in the desert up there. It's an amazing place, but somewhat surrounded by a desolate desert environment. And here was this university with young people coming, charting out their futures. And I'm just imagining myself standing there. I'm looking off at the Pacific Ocean. What would it be like to have grown up here? So far away from the epicenter of where AI is emanating from, right? I had just come from Silicon Valley. I'm thinking, folks here need to have agency too. This shouldn't just be the models and the tools that are being advanced on the world. I really hope that the folks here can take these tools and create things that are meaningful and relevant for their lives. A few days later, we did an event where the CTO of Microsoft in Mercosur, based in Chile, and several other people spoke, and they made a very clear call on stage. We want our AI. We speak Spanish. We speak the Chilean dialect of Spanish. Our culture, our stories, our words. And indeed, I speak Spanish very well. Chilean Spanish is quite different from Mexican and so on. They deserve that. They deserve to have an AI that writes to them in the way that Claude wrote to us. And this is one of the things that inspires me so much about the global opportunities with AI at the individual level, at the company building level, at the community level. It truly is my hope that this reflects the diversity and the complexity and the beauty of all of humanity, not just what comes out of Seattle or San Francisco.
Right. I mean, and that's I feel like that's a very topical and pervasive challenge, right? Is having local, regional cultures and dialects and histories, either intentionally or unintentionally, sort of washed away by these other dominant narratives and storylines that come through. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. We've already blown through our 45 minutes.
Are we
so
over
now
time?
So now we're in the free zone, man. Yeah. But I do want to ask about the publication itself, the process for that, because again, nothing was traditional in the process. So can you guys talk a little bit just about what you learned about kind of going this self-publication route with this, with the book and everything?
Respect. Deep respect for everybody involved in getting a book to market.
Yeah.
And the realization, we have this culture where we think that when a book ends up on a shelf, it is the author's work. It is the work of an army of people that are able to sort of craft and sort of amplify and position that author's work. I think I'm speaking as an author here, and I had no idea how little I actually contribute to the books that I've previously.
Yeah, because you had the experience of publishing books under the traditional.
That's right.
Method,
but with this,
it's a whole supply chain.
It is, but this was soup to nuts for me. Having to learn the whole process of once you've got those words, how you actually design the interior of the book, doing it professionally, how you design the cover of that, how you think about the whole publication route. And it has been an unbelievably steep learning curve, but I have such a deep respect for the industries that do this.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. And it's been wild to see too. I mean, again, from the luxury of getting to sit over here
so
and
even
watch the process.
Even down to, and we had a talk with a wonderful person about this process. This was only a few weeks ago.
Yeah, Paul Carr at Best Bookseller.
Yes, and he was incredibly supportive. He was saying, I've done this. I've made every mistake in the book, and I've learned so much. And believe me, you're going to make mistakes as well. And one of the things he said was, when you come to do the ebook, the Kindle version, he said, it's not just as simple as taking those words and putting them into a file. He said, you really need a professional to help you with this. And I said, yeah, thanks for the advice. I'm going to see what I can do myself. I understand exactly where he's coming from, because the amount of work that needs to go into taking those words and crafting them into something that makes a professional ebook is profound.
Well, and I still remember you were showing a little bit of how you're doing that, and you was like, who knew you'd have to be editing HTML
I know,
on an ebook?
with literally thousands upon thousands of edits.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it went from whatever the word count is to 10x in terms of like the HTML code.
Yep.
And it's just like, oh, good. I just remember I got to walk away down the hallway and was like, good luck.
right. Yes.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
No, it's absolutely wild. So let's we'll sort of wrap up here, but I think one of the key pieces here is the official launch date is
October the 14th.
October the 14th.
Yes.
And most importantly, where and how do people get a copy?
Yeah, so it will be on Amazon, of course, around the world. You'll be able to find it there. We've also got the website, which is
AI and theartofbeinghuman.com.
Yes, which will have all of the information, not only the link to where to buy it, but also information on the tools and additional sort of
all the supplementary information and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's phenomenal.
But it will not only be available at Amazon.com, but I think it'll be at least accessible. If you walked into a bookseller or retailer near you and asked for it, they will have the capability of ordering.
That's right. So we're not publishing exclusively through Amazon, which basically means that anybody who wants sort of bulk orders, corporate orders, any bookstores that want to stock it, we have the supply chain and supply route for that.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Truly amazing. All right. So here's the biggest question of all. When this settles down and you're on your yacht and say let's say 6 months.
So before you finish that, I've got to tell you something. So one of the revelations in going this publication route is you actually see how the sausage is made in terms of how much you get back. Yeah. So I was putting all the pricing in for the hardback cover the other day, and we originally had it priced at a little over $30 for this, and I was thinking we're going to make a packet on this. You get to the end of it, and you realize that for every sale, Jeff is going to get 80 cents, and I'm going to get 80 cents.
Yeah,
this is not going to buy us off.
Isn't it wild? I mean, it is in some cases it's a little heartbreaking, which is what
it's like the story of fair trade coffee growers.
That's right.
Yeah. All the money goes to everybody
to the
except
machines.
the person that grows the coffee.
Right. It's like congratulations on all your work. Here's a hay penny. It's like oh my gosh. So part of that is the excitement where, however long it is, let's say 6 months a year.
Yeah.
Would you do it? Would you do it again?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I? No, Jeff, go. Then I'm going to qualify.
Absolutely. I certainly hope we'll do this again. It's been such a pleasure working with Andrew, and obviously, benefiting from all of your work together. The great deal of thinking you've all put into this. It was such a pleasure and a learning experience. And there are other books that I think that I'm already thinking about that extend upon this initial thought into other adjacent areas, not to be disclosed at this time. But I'm very hopeful that this will hit a nerve and be useful to people, and that we'll have the chance to work together again. And
it's very much a platform book. You can already begin to see sort of how you sort of build on it.
Yeah.
So I was going to add my qualification because at heart, I am a human writer. Writing is my craft. So this was an aberration to me working with AI. And I love the process, but I am desperate to get back to my sort of slow, clunky, very human artisanship when it comes to writing.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
And I would say, actually,
do you think you'll do an AI augmented book again, or with a platform book like this
with the right,
more time?
With the right reason. And it all comes down to what is the purpose of what you're trying to do. So yes, I would if the purpose was there, but I want to hold on to sort of my humanity here. But just a little teaser. So you read the book, and everything in the book, apart from two little bits, is really heavily influenced by AI. All of it has our stamp on it. So every word, every sentence, we have gone through and we have crafted. Right. But there are just two bits which are solely human. No AI touching them whatsoever.
I forgot to mention that.
Yeah. And I'm actually not going to give them away because you need to get the book to see them. But they are very intentionally there as very human written pieces. And one piece which is written solely by AI that we didn't tinker with at all.
Yeah, and it's not hidden at all.
When
you come to it, you will know it. And it is really interesting. That alone is worth picking up a copy of AI and the Art of Being Human, a practical guide to thriving with AI while rediscovering yourself in the process. So absolutely fantastic. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining us from Blitz Scaling Ventures and founder and community builder of AI Salon. Thank you so much for joining us today, but also just in this amazing project and process. This has been so fun. I've learned a ton. Again, I've benefited greatly from being able to just learn from both of you and see how this is done as well.
But thank you so much. And in fact, the work that you do here at the Institute for the Future of Being Human is in many ways an inspiration for, the thought that a book addressing these aspects could even take place. So
I appreciate that.
You've created the foundation really for the topic.
That was the plan.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Well, Andrew, thank you. Also, I mean, just a fun pod to record, but also just an incredible achievement for both of you. And also, I mean, I do have to say, when I first got a glimpse of all of the little blurbs or whatever, I'm like, well done, gents. I mean, what a stacked list of people. I mean, you're reading this and you're like, oh my, how did you get these people to even answer an email, let alone read your book? So just absolutely phenomenal.
It is an extraordinary endorsement.
We're
very gratified and thankful to all of the people who shared endorsements for either the book cover, the dust jacket, or the website. Their friends, their collaborators, or respected voices in their industries or professions, and the fact that they thought enough to take the time to read this is it's very gratifying.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do hope that our the Modem Futura audience will also join us in celebrating the launch of the book. I'll put all the links that I can into the show notes as well. That can go to the website, go to Amazon, or wherever else we can link out to the book and where people can get it and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, what a tremendous project. So yeah. Fantastic. Well done. Awesome. Well, and to all of our audience, again, thanks for listening. And please, if you're interested in the book, like I said, you'll have the links, or, you can obviously by the time this podcast airs, you just Google it.
AI and the Art of Being Human.com.
There you go. That's it. We'll have that in there. And of course, you can always continue to support our show by leaving us a rating and review, and share with your friends and people who you might think might be interested in a book like this. I think it would be, there's a massive overlap. It's not really a Venn diagram. It's just a big circle, I think, with our listeners as well.
I think so.
So fantastic. Well, I guess that's it from us, from Modem Futura, and we'll see you on the next episode.
We'll see you then.
Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jeff.
End transmission.